All right, so let's get started. Thank you guys all for coming on a Friday. This is the last workshop of our Open Ed Week 2026. The title is Designing Renewable Assignments, an Introduction to Open Pedagogy. So we'll be talking a little bit about what open pedagogy is, what renewable assignments are, and then the idea is for you guys to have time to actually think about and consider how you might use this in your class. And we have a couple of examples as well that we will show you guys. And my name is Stephanie Kaufman. I'm a biology instructor and I'm also the OER lead at Clovis. Open Ed Week is actually a global event that highlights OERs. So institutions all over the world do different things to celebrate. There's lots of open webinars that everybody can go to, no matter where they live. Here locally, every year, myself and all the other OER leads in the district, we get together and sort of put together these workshops for open education. All right, what are we going to learn about today? I'll introduce briefly what open pedagogy is and renewable assignments, and then we have some examples. Melanie Sanwo from Clovis is here to show her example from English, and we have an example from Sally Potter in linguistics class, and I'll also show a small example from one of my biology classes. And then we hope to use the rest of the time for you guys to think about how you could actually use this in your classroom. So a little bit of housekeeping. Make sure you put your name and college in the chat. Most of you guys, it looks like you are all doing that now. But if you have not, please do that for attendance. Feel free to stop me at any time and ask questions. You can just unmute. I'll also stop in between different sections so that we can answer questions. And also, if you don't want to unmute yourself, feel free to put them in the chat. We are recording this and it will be on the Fresno City College YouTube channel. So, but we will not be recording the breakout rooms and the discussions at the end. Before we talk about open pedagogy, I just want to define some of the terms that you'll be hearing. Maybe some of you guys have gone to previous workshops this week, but if not, there are 3 acronyms that get thrown around a lot in this sphere. They are ZTC, LTC, and OER. ZTC is zero textbook cost, so this just refers to the costs of materials that students need to pay. Low textbook cost means that the course has instructional materials less than $40. That's a locally determined number. All 4 of our colleges use the same number. And then what we're here to talk about are open educational resources. And these are textbooks and other course materials that have open licensing that allows for people to reuse them, remix them, revise them, and use them usually for free. So while most OERs are ZTC, they're not the same exact thing. There are other ways things can be ZTC, and sometimes OERs can actually cost money. So an OER is going to allow people to do what we call the free Rs. And it's really important to recognize that not everything that's free online is an OER, not everything that's digital is an OER. But specifically, OERs have special licenses, which we won't talk about today, that let faculty reuse them, retain them, revise them, remix them, and redistribute them. We're talking about open pedagogy, which is kind of envelopes around OER. So I kind of want to ask you guys before we start, what do you think the purpose of any assignment usually is? I mean, maybe there could be multiple. So if you want to type in the chat, you can, or you can unmute yourself. But what is the purpose of an assignment? Why are we doing them? Why do we ask students to do them? To help students practice what they learn. Promote learning and assess learning. Demonstrate how well they meet an objective. Yeah. And I think you guys hit on kind of the 2. There can be many reasons, but a lot of the reasons are help them learn, assess what. they have learned. And I think almost all of you are hitting on something very similar to that. Yeah, check for understanding, practice what they're learning. So open pedagogy is not all about assignments. It's actually a set of practices that use OER, so open educational practices, to engage students as active contributors in the knowledge. Often this is through how we design our assignments, but also it's on how we can improve openly available resources. And there are actually many, many definitions of open pedagogy. We are going to focus on something called renewable assignments. So that is one method of engaging in OP is the development of what are called renewable assignments, and I'll define that in a minute. But there are lots of other ways that faculty will engage in open pedagogy where they let students be bigger contributors within the class. And so one of the other examples is things like having them build certain pieces of the course policies or the syllabus, right? That's an example of open pedagogy. And there are many others. We're going to focus on this idea of renewable assignments. Right. So this is kind of just summarizing types of assignments. And I feel like I don't know how useful it is to like classify all of our assignments, but it is useful to see kind of look at this as kind of a spectrum. A normal assignment, and there will be many of these probably within a class, are meant to assess learning and or promote learning. But they usually are just a way for the student to show that to the instructor. And then that's sort of the end of that artifact's life. So we call these disposable assignments. Students create something, they show that they've learned something, but it doesn't have any value past that, right? It's still a useful thing. But we can start to build in other kinds of value for students with things like authentic assignments. So these would have some sort of value beyond. Maybe they are creating something that they can use later, right? Like a portfolio, or in some of our biology classes, we have students create research posters, sorry. So they're also learning how to build a poster, which is a skill they will actually use if they go into grad school or even in undergrad. There's many students will participate in research symposiums where they might make a poster. We can have constructionist assignments where these are also made public, but maybe don't have an open license. And then at the bottom, the furthest on the spectrum would be that these also carry an open license so that others can build on that information. So kind of the defining feature is that the students are really actively participating in creating things that showcase knowledge that others will have access to, right? So this could be something like them taking those research posters to a research symposium and presenting them locally at their campus, all the way to posting them online with open licenses. So, and then there's, things can fall anywhere in between all of these, right? Before we show you guys some examples of renewable assignments, do you guys have any questions? Also to give ourselves a lot of work was a comment in the chat. Yeah, that can happen. All right, so we're going to look at a couple examples. The first example is from Sally Potter. So she's actually, if you guys are from Fresno, you know who Sally Potter is, but she's the OER lead from Fresno, and then she's also the DE coordinator and a bunch of other things. And she teaches linguistics. And so this is an example of a rather big project in her class in Linguistics 10. This is about 50% of their in-class time after week 6 is spent on this. And instead of having students create a research paper or write things up in a Word document that they submit on Canvas that she reads, they are in creating their work in a public space on a Google site. And there's a lot of effort and time that goes into this. But once it's done, it's actually out there for other people to read, for future students to build on, and part of that sharing of the knowledge, right? So it's made by Google Sites. She has to teach the students a little bit about Creative Commons, right? So that if their work is being shared out publicly with open licenses, it's important that your students understand what that means, that they know that means that other people are going to be able to take this and adapt it and reuse it. They work with the library on how to find, it's a research project of how to find information and build it. They have a lot of collaboration between students and with each other and with the instructor. They have a lot of check-ins, and she even teaches them how to use ChatGPT to help with their project, and also how not to use ChatGPT to work on the project. So I'll show you the website. You guys can scan the QR code if you want to look at the website on your phone, but I will click on it so we can see it. Right. So this Google Sites houses many articles that her students have put together. Wow, there's a lot of them. See? Right. And so this is one of the really good benefits of projects like this is the investment you get from students, because they're building something that's going to live beyond their time in the class. They're a lot more willing to put time, see the use of the research that they're doing. Right. So if you guys have the link, I'll put the link in the chat really quick. So if you guys want to click on it. Do you guys have any questions? I'm not Sally, but I'll try to answer them, or I will get the answer from Sally. All right, I'm going to pass my screen over to Melanie Sanwell, who's joining us from Clovis, and she's going to talk a little bit about her open pedagogy project in English C1000, C1000H, right?
Yes.
I
Hi,
got the H.
everyone. Welcome. Sorry, my camera, I obviously need to update a few of my settings. I'm not able to use my camera. And Stephanie, can you give me permission to share? Okay, it's there. I've got it now. All right. So, has everybody seen my screen where I have my Wiki Education homepage dashboard open? Fabulous. And in the chat, I just put the link to this too. So you should be able to access it as well. So the advantage of this renewable um, assignment is number one, especially to address that we make more work for ourselves. This one actually, you have assistance from Wiki Education. You have an assigned Wiki editor who helps not only you get everything set up for the course, but also helps the students as they work on their projects. So they will go into the wiki editor will go in to see what the students have been writing and editing and give them feedback and let them know what's working well and where else they can find sources. So you work in partnership with Wiki Education, and Wiki Education actually provides the dashboard. So the way that this works is um, the students get to write or edit original articles for Wikipedia. And we chose to do some for most of my students in this honors class were pre-med majors. And so we did articles for underrepresented members of the STEM field. So Wikipedia actually gave us a list of names of famous people who have made significant contributions in the STEM field who don't yet have Wikipedia articles. And students chose those and they worked in teams to do original research. So, and then to write a brand new original article. So let me just show you how this Wikipedia dashboard works. So the students have access to this, and Wikipedia provides the timeline, and all of the assignments. So it's broken down into smaller steps about what they need to do in order to create their page. It includes training pages. So, and you can adjust the due dates. So you can see that we work on this for about 9 weeks, and we spend about 50% of class time working on this, plus they do assignments there at home. It includes reflection assignments as well as the actual creation of the article, and they work together on peer reviewing each other's. And the really neat thing about it is it does keep track of every single thing that students do on the wiki page. So you see exactly how much work each person is doing. So it provides accountability that way, and that makes it easier for us to grade. But I think what is most important is students are motivated to do a good job on this because they know that this is going to be viewed by the public, and it's meaningful because they are writing something original and somebody in a field that they're interested in who doesn't yet have an article. They learn about the importance of finding credible sources and citing them correctly. They learn that if they put anything on there from a source that's not credible or they don't cite their sources, other Wikipedia editors can go in there and delete what they've done. So they're motivated to do things properly, and they find it really rewarding. And like Stephanie was talking about with renewable assignments, this lives on outside of the class. And when students ask me for letters of recommendation, I will often include a link to the article that the student wrote and say they participated in writing an original article for Wikipedia. So for this particular class, it was a small class. They created 3 original articles. That's how many editors, and this is over 632,000 views on those articles. So as they work on the article, they can go back a year or two later and see how many other people have added to it, how many people have viewed it. And something that was really neat that happened, I invited our librarian, Alicia Diaz Rest, to give a presentation about how to find some credible sources for assignments like this. And she got to tell them about how when she was in grad school, she also got to write a Wikipedia article. It still lives on, and she could show them, which parts were hers and which ones had been added to. So it's a really neat assignment. And I know that there's this idea that Wikipedia isn't a credible source, but students and instructors learn how much goes into creating those articles and the safeguards that are there to make sure that they remain credible and the research that's required. So it opens students' eyes to the value of finding factual information on Wikipedia websites, for example. Any questions? Did everybody see the link? Did that work in the chat? Yeah, I don't think I sent it yet. There we go. There's the link.
Can you share one of the articles, Melanie?
Sure, let me do that.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. And because I teach science or biology, I kind of went through the ones they made so we can include them within our class where they make sense.
That's fantastic.
So it really gets shared out a lot past this.
So they start with a blank template and then they just build it.
Yeah. And in a lot of ways, it's not that different than what they would be turning in for like a disposable research assignment.
Exactly, exactly. Yep. And then you can see who did the edits. So here's where you can view the history. So
So
they can see
Susie
where,
can't see Susie can't see the screen share. Can everybody else? I can see it.
hmm. It says it can only
What?
be seen by a host and co-host. Interesting.
Oh, rude.
I think it's because you have it on focus mode. There we go.
Is it working now? Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the article. So it begins as a blank template, and then that's the other nice thing because it gives them a template, so then they know how to structure it. And again, that's all included in the training. and students pick up on it really quickly. And you don't have to be a Wikipedia expert either because you have a Wikipedia expert assigned to your class who can answer your questions and your students' questions. So it's pretty amazing what the students are able to generate and produce and then watch it grow.
Have you done it more than one time?
I have. I've done it probably 4 times. Yes. And then anybody can check the history. So that's what the history looks like. But the view for the instructor, I don't know that I should show the what the students' articles are, because it would show what they're, but just wait, if you take my word for it, it does give you a report about each student and how many words they've contributed and how many edits they've done. But just for the sake of privacy, I'm not going to pull that up. I don't want to show students' names on here.
Yeah.
But that is built into the dashboard. So it's all really self-contained. It's easy. You just add it to a Canvas page with a link and the instructions, and then they go here and they just follow the timeline and get their work done.
So, do you guys have any questions for Melanie? Yeah, so this obviously fits really good into an English class or any class where you have to do research. I've also seen an example of the Wikipedia project for biology, where in a plant science course, they are writing a article for a local plant that's around them. Or either they're working on a new one or they are adding information to one that just barely has any of the, genus, species, all the information about the plant. And then their students are developing material. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again. So if the same issue happens, please tell me. All right, you can see it?
Yes.
All right, so I wanted to share a really small example. Melanie's project and Sally's are both very grand and amazing. This is a really small one, but I wanted to share an example of one that isn't so big. It might feel a little bit more attainable to do or try something small before you jump into something big. So this is from my Bio C1000 class, which used to be called Bio 3. It's the introduction to life science. And so this is an example where we have students actually going out and doing what's called community science. They use a website or app called iNaturalist. So this is a really, anyone can download this app, whether you're a scientist or not. If you guys, I recommend this app to everybody because it's a lot of fun and it really highlights all of the biology that is around us. And scientists use this to actually learn about the distribution of organisms on our planet, right? It's very clever in my opinion. Instead of having to go out and do field research and like try to get an idea of where organisms are living with just scientists going out and doing this kind of work, it engages the whole community and they're able to see with the really good resolution where all these different organisms live. So I usually do this project in my online class. It was actually born from COVID in 2020 when we moved online, but students are able to get the iNaturalist app. And the idea, this is in our diversity of life unit. They go outside because it's a biology class. So they go outside and they log wild organisms that they find. It's a very valuable assignment in and of itself, just because sometimes when we live in a very urban environment, we don't appreciate all of the plants and all of the animals that are actually living around us, all of the fungi that are around us. So there's that value, but also when the students go out and they create these observations, those observations, each one becomes a data point that scientists can use. There are also scientists within iNaturalist that are identifiers. So when a student posts an observation, you don't necessarily know the name of that plant or the name of that organism, but scientists are in there constantly. It's kind of like their hobby for a lot of them, and they are adding identifying features to it, right? So that they are also sort of using this app to learn what organism it is that they're looking at. So I will show you this for within the class. This assignment is a discussion assignment. They log wild organisms around them, and then they use iNaturalist to get a lot of detailed information about one of them. They can choose, they only at a minimum have to log one, but a lot of students choose to log more. So this is an example of my class from last, right? We have different observations from all over the place, right? Let me see if I can show these guys. So this is one class, right? So here's all of their different observations that they've logged. The criteria is, of course, to log wild organisms, but sometimes students log things like roses that were planted there, and this leads to really good discussions with the students about what actually is growing wild around them versus things that are planted by people, right? And so these are just some of them. So each one of these observations becomes, so this one's a research grade observation, which means that they're encouraged to make fun biology things. But this is a research grade observation, which means that the scientists who reviewed it were able to, based on the picture, identify what it is. Not all of them reach research grade, but a lot of them do. But all of these observations are all public, and they all have, the students can choose to put a copyright on the image, or they can choose to put a Creative Commons license on the image, which is by default. So this one, as you can see with the map, it does have, it might have location features on. So if you are doing something like this, I do tell my students that about the location features of the app, and they are allowed to turn them off or on. They also actually don't have to use the app if they don't want to, but the vast majority of them want to use the app. And then they actually, in the reviews for the course, this is the most cited assignment of the one that they're going to keep doing, right? So lots of students will comment that they're going to keep using it and keep citing things or making observations within that. So this is a really good example, and it also gives them exposure to the whole idea of community science and lets them be a little bit a part of a bigger project. Scientists use this data to do all kinds of things, like learning what species are maybe endemic to California, only live there, learning which species are becoming invasive, right? Because people are starting to log them in places where they don't belong. So there's a lot of value to the data that the students are collecting. All right. You guys have any questions for myself, Melanie, or Ellie? And I'm using iNaturalist in a really small way for just an assignment. It's very doable to scale this up to something if that's something that would fit within the bounds of your class, to where students are actually doing their own sort of research project, right? They could use it, for example, to make observations for however long your class is on your campus, right? And then get a profile of what the flora and fauna on the campus look like. All right, just some other very generic examples of renewable assignments. There have been a couple where courses where students have actually worked together to create like whole chapters for textbooks, where they're each in charge of a section, but then they have to review all the sections, so they're learning all of the content. Students might create things that you use for your class, right? Maybe if they're making videos or infographics or things like that that you could use in the class. Maybe even if you're not showing them completely open, it's still a little bit in that direction. They might publish research posters. So this is one we do at Clovis too. We have a research symposium every semester. So there's several classes now that actually have research projects within the class. Students can choose to take that project to the symposium and present it. They might be doing something like citizen science. And then there's also an app called Hypothesis Is, right? And that Hypothesis is what it's called. And students can use that to annotate collaboratively on either websites or course materials. All right, do you guys have any questions or thoughts? Or if you're doing something similar and would like to share, we would love to hear it. All right. All right. So we're going to take about 10 minutes for each of you to kind of consider how you might do something small or big within one of your classes. So if you want to choose a class, here are some kind of questions to get you started. You don't need to get through all of them or have the answers to all of them, but just to sort of start brainstorming. We'll take about 10 minutes to brainstorm and then we'll go into breakout rooms to share with each other. But think about what kind of open pedagogy project might work for your course, right? How would your students collaborate and contribute to the project? It might be something like, Melanie's example is a lot of that support is built in, right? So what resources or support will the students need to successfully do this? How will you assess their contributions and overall success of the project? What method would you use to provide formative feedback? So checkpoints and kind of scaffolding. How would you facilitate peer feedback and collaboration so the students started working together? And then how would they share their work with a broader audience, right? If that's applicable. Okay. So I'm going to set a timer for 10 minutes. My timer would be 1:33, 12:43. All right. Hopefully you guys all have sort of an idea of something that might work in your class, even just a little bit. We're going to move into breakout rooms. So I will send you guys off into them with 3 or 4 faculty. I'll call you back, not in 15 minutes. We don't have that long. Maybe in about 10 minutes. Right. But discuss what you guys came up with and I'll pop in. Make sure or that you also consider sort of some of the challenges or things that you might need support with when you're discussing them. Give it 30 seconds or so for everybody to get back. We only have about 6 more minutes, but we'd love to hear a couple final thoughts from the breakout rooms if you guys would like to volunteer. But what projects maybe you discussed? You don't have to answer all these questions. You don't have to answer any of them. If there's just something else you'd like to share about your guys' discussion, but maybe some things to think about. What projects did you discuss? What would you need to implement this? Or just insights and questions that you guys had. Yeah, Alan.
We were, I don't know if it was so much the specific projects that we were talking about, but it seemed like one of the ideas that we came up with in our breakout room was trying to figure out some ways to get students talking back and forth, like across courses, like from one semester to another, or to have, like in the case of foreign language instruction, to have, like native speakers or senior speakers who would communicate with beginning students, like helping them learn, and then the beginning students giving feedback to the more advanced speakers. And I could see something like that maybe also working in some form or variation, like in the communication classes I teach, like debate and public speaking and stuff like that.
So like having students from other classes come to yours from past classes?
Or even like through electronic means. So, we were talking about like creating blogs that would facilitate communication, across different groups of people so that I suppose it could happen in real time, but it could also happen, um, like over time where, one of the ideas that was in a previous slide was about having students sort of like talking to future students about what they've learned. And I think, maybe stuff like that, where it could be in person, but it could also be, through web pages, through blogs, through other means like that.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. And I think we have like sort of static things like that. Maybe like we have some in our classes where people write notes to the future students, but it's not in a way where that communication can continue or be back and forth. So that'd be very beneficial for students. Anyone else want to unmute and share from your room? Melanie also said that they had great ideas for topics for student podcasts, explainer videos, or infographics. Yeah, one of the things that got me thinking about this kind of stuff the first time was I do have a video project in one of my biology classes and one of my online ones. And some of the students just make phenomenal, amazing videos. And their comment when they turned it in was they actually said something that they were like kind of sad that this was the end, like that there wasn't um, something more for his video after that class. And I think we did put it on, his was on YouTube, so it's still living out there. Uh, but it makes you think about that. Would anyone else like to share? We have just a couple more minutes. Yeah, and we do have the idea of communicating across classes forums where you can do things like that. For one of our research projects, we do have I forget what it's called, but it's a website where the students can post their projects and their questions and their thoughts, and it's outside of Canvas, so it continues on forever. So students can see from this semester, can see what students last semester were talking about as they were developing their projects. They also get help from real scientists within this portal. So, but I don't think students talk to each other from the different classes within there. All right, well, there's only 2 minutes left. If you guys want to take off, go ahead. If you have any questions, I'll hang out for a few more minutes.